What's up, everybody? It's Keefy at GhostCultMag.com. I'm back with another live stream, the very last live stream I will do from this apartment. So it's a little bittersweet, but moving out of here tomorrow. But in the meantime, I thought I would jump on and talk about the very, very controversial Deftones Eros situation. Deftones, one of the biggest bands in heavy music, certainly one of the most interesting and original bands ever. But y'all fans are crazy. What up, Gabe of Anti Moz Beast is here. Again, man, you know, I love bands that I love, and I definitely understand loving them so much it hurts. Hey, Gabe is also here on YouTube, and my love of my life and fiance is here, Melissa. What up? What up? Gonna talk some Deftones, Prince noises, and goofy shit, but also interesting shit. What's up, Badger? Badger's here. We're, in case you're new here, GhostCultMag.com is your one-stop shop for rock and metal news, interviews with bands that matter, concert and festival coverage all over the world. What happened with Deftones? Well, Eros, their lost album that they recorded and shelved and never put out, was leaked earlier in the week. And the fans are not okay. Everybody is either really too upset for one reason or another. We're going to talk about the Deftones. We're going to talk about lost albums, famous ones, not so famous ones. We're going to talk about Chi Cheng, who's a personal hero of mine, the original Deftones bassist who died in 2013. And again, just, just thought I would jump on and do a very last live stream here from the apartment in San Francisco, the West Coast HQ. Moving to my new place tomorrow with my fiance. So you'll see more videos with a different look coming soon. All right. Too intense and definitely not sure about that, but just again, I'll get into why. And whether bands actually owe it to you or not to give you everything they ever do. I mean, I do a lot of interviews, and a lot of my interviews focus on bands and the process of making music, and not every idea deserves to be released. Not every good idea needs to be a song, just like, not every sperm needs to be a human being. So just, very interesting. So anyway, in case you were here last week, we talked about the comeback of Faith No More on another live stream. That's a podcast now. You can listen to and watch those on our channels. Also, a new interview this week with L of Insight, as he got a tattoo at New York Hardcore Tattoos in New York City by my partner, Omar. Oh, that's killer, Badger. That's killer. Direct from Tony. That's kind of fine. That's fun. I'll do my live stream normally on Thursdays on Friday this week, so stay tuned. Also, we had our, huge interview for my other podcast, Glacially Musical, where he interviewed Dave Krusen, the original drummer of Pearl Jam, who drummed on Pearl Jam 10. Go check that out. It was an honor. And we'll be talking to him again soon, too. Thanks for watching here. Oh, Rubber Band Man's here. What up? John Mortimer's here. Thanks so much. We're just talking some Deftones. And again, if you're feeling tipsy, these shows will always be free. But if you're feeling tipsy, you can buy us a super chat or a super like or a super thanks on YouTube, or support us on the apps like Ko-fi, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, whatever. We do make some money from advertising and some partnerships. Oh, dope. That's dope, Badger. I'm super stoked to hear about that. Very cool. I always heard he's a swell guy. I'd love to interview him sometime. He had the misfortune of being on, some not beloved albums, but what are you going to do? Anyway, why are we here? We're here to talk about Deftones. And, just really quick, Deftones are right now one of the biggest bands in the world. They are bigger than they have ever been in their history. Some of that was, definitely because of, the pandemic and TikTok blowing them up on things like Change and My Own Summer and things like that. But they're a band for they've been a band for 35, 36 years, and they didn't actually put their first record out till 1995, The Amazing Adrenaline on Maverick Records. But really, the Deftones we're talking about today is not 2026 Deftones. It's 2000. You almost have to take it back to 2000 Deftones, and I'll tell you why. And again, if you're new here, please like and subscribe. It helps us stay afloat. And hey, Doug, what's up? And Dylan is also here. What up? So yeah, this Deftones, the earlier Deftones with Chi Cheng on bass there in the back. Just to take it back for a second, Deftones come out at the height of nu metal. They were already moving away from nu metal on their second album, Around the Fur. White Pony is a vast departure from mostly nu metal. There's a couple of soundtrack songs and things like Crow City of Angels, where they had some rap metal, but really Chino was moving away from that and also emphasizing his singing voice, and the band was writing much more interesting and complex and diverse music because that represents the band themselves, which is super interesting. And White Pony was almost a step towards dream pop and shoegaze, which were not big. They sort of had their places, their early building blocks back then, but possibly not as big as you might, imagine, and certainly set them apart from all their other peers. So they have a lot of pressure to follow White Pony, which is a tremendous smash success on the back of a bunch of great songs. And they put out the self-titled Deftones record, which they personally didn't like, but it absolutely has some bangers. It was reissued on vinyl about 3 years ago. I have it in storage on red translucent vinyl, and it has Minerva and Hexagram, which are amazing. And then, but the band didn't tour much behind that because they were not getting along. And then so they did go in the studio and cut the B-Sides and Rarities record, which you can now get. I think it was a Record Store Day reissue and has now been put out on vinyl. I got that last year as a reissue. And then they went in to make the perhaps ill-fated Saturday Night Wrist with Bob Ezrin because they love Deftones, especially Steph Carpenter. And it wasn't a great match. And Bob is, a well-known producer for Pink Floyd The Wall and Kiss Destroyer and Alice Cooper Welcome to My Nightmare. But, maybe he wasn't the right choice for the album. That album does have a couple of absolute bangers: Hole in the Earth, Rapture, Cherry Waves, Mine featuring Surge, Kim Dracula, Circe's. So a lot of now popular songs by the band, but they really didn't like the record, but they, went out on tour and toured behind it. And they were really hoping the next record was going to bring them back towards not so much the success of White Pony, but maybe a record, like Saturday Night Wrist and the self-titled album were kind of recorded piecemeal and not like the team that had been growing up and went to high school together at that time. And then, skateboarded and played video games and drank 40s and shot hoops in Sacramento and then became this huge band. So they were really trying to kind of like repair their friendship, but they had not been getting along or not having a good time. But they did go out on tour and they did support that album in 2005. And they went in to make their next record. And then what happened, they had started hanging out and recording it and were getting a lot of good stuff down. And then a terrible thing happened is that Chi Cheng's brother died. And on the way back from the funeral, their family was in a car wreck of which Chi was killed. And Chi was a tremendous part of the early Deftones sound. He wasn't killed. He was injured. He had a brain injury. Sorry. His brother had died. Their family crashed their car coming home from the funeral, which is just terrible. Chi was ejected from the car, which is sort of the emphasis of Buckle Up for Chi. And the music they had recorded, which was tentatively titled Eros, which was a joke about porn they had been watching and all these porn girls and these video series they had been watching of German porns. They decided to shelve the record. But the shorter story is that not only did they hope that Chi would make a recovery, and they would, this guy was a beloved guy in the music scene. He was an integral part of their band. The bass sound of the early first 4 or 5 Deftones records is is just monstrous, and he is an incredible writer and live performer as well. And I had seen Deftones so many times, opening for Anthrax, later on headlining by themselves, opening for Pantera, opening for Black Sabbath and Pantera, Ozfests, things like that. Um, they really became a huge band, but you lose your brother. You don't want to really continue to make this music. I could see why it wasn't a thing that for them, like maybe I don't want to continue to do this. So they shelved the record, they kind of lick their wounds, and they reconvene and decide, like, we're not going to put this record out. And again, like I said, you can't imagine, she was a beloved dude. Korn's second song on their second album, Life is Peachy, is named for Chi. This is before he, long before he was injured and eventually passed away. So they shelved the record and like, someday maybe Chi will come back and make, finish this record with us. In the meantime, they reconvened, scrapped all that music, and wrote wrote Diamond Eyes, which ends up becoming one of their hugest albums. They actually switched producers, went to a whole different place, started from scratch, and wrote Diamond Eyes, which is in many ways one of their best albums, one of maybe even their top, surpassing the last two for sure. Certainly in terms of sales, I think it's got aggression and also beauty and a lot more diversity, similar to White Pony, and really continue to kind of like put them apart. I know that there are Deftones fans that, Deftones has been around for a band that's been around for 35 years and only has 8 or 9 albums. They are remarkably consistent in terms of their output. Maybe not all their records are 10 of 10s, but Diamond Eyes definitely is. And, they kind of got their groove back. At least they felt that way. And then, little by little, the internet starts to do what internet things do. There were some primitive uploads of Eros demos put online. Chino himself finished one song, Smile, with Sean Lopez of Far and Crosses, Chino's best friend, and put it out. Warner immediately took it down, but it was immediately, copied by the whole internet and shared everywhere. And, over the years, little bits and pieces of Eros have popped up in other Deftones songs, or, apparently parts of Rosemary and things like that. Sex Tape might have like snippets of parts that were meant to be for Eros originally. And it's really an album that has lived like in the fantasy life of Deftones fans, like mythologizing this thing. The band is given different reports. Steph and Abe had said, like, I don't think this thing will ever come out. Steph then backtracked and said, I would love to see this thing come out. Abe has said, yeah, maybe someday we'll put it out. Chino goes back and forth between whether wanting it to be out or not. The band did perform. Drunk with Buds is here. What's up? And Concept Cafes. What's up? Just talking some Deftones. They played Smile live for the first time ever at Dia de los Deftones 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. So a gajillion people posted videos of that song and then shared it everywhere. And, just kind of took a life of its own. And then this week, for some reason, someone uploaded supposedly the entire upload of Eros Live. There's a lot of hand-wringing going on by the fans. Oh, this was never meant to be released. Don't listen to it. Oh my God, where can I get it? If you want to find it, you can find it, which is fine. But, personally, if you've watched these songs on YouTube, you've seen or heard most of it. But this seemed to be working titles. Interestingly enough, I think I might have some of them here. Some of the titles, along with demos and B-sides of Ohms, which are apparently not meant to ever come out either. The PRP was the first one to have it. Destiny, Brenda, Melanie, Smile. Smile is the one we've heard a lot. Margot, Candy, Sable, Electra, Tempest, and Diamond, and Brianna, all names of like strippers or porn girls, I guess. And apparently there's a song called Dallas, but it might be one of these other songs in a different guise. And Chino had said that one was the closest to being complete besides Smile that he felt he completed. So, people were in their feelings. It was really interesting to see kind of older heads not cave in and want to hear it, and newer fans like just thirsty for, Deftones anything wanted it. So I thought that was inherently interesting, right? Just to get back on screen here, I actually have my iPad here next to me, my old iPad with my head up, buckle up for cheese sticker right here, and I've donated to that organization and things like that, and hella sad, but Chi was a legend. People theorizing like Chi would want this out. If I had a band and I died, I would want my final music to be out. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe not. So we don't know what he would want. Apparently, Chi's family does get royalties from his early albums with Deftones. And, I don't know if another record would theoretically, Deftones sold their catalog, of which Chi's family, I'm sure, has his stake. So Warner, in one of the rare moves you hear all the time about legacy bands selling their future rights to their catalog, and Warner is the first company to really buy back the band's catalog from them so they could continue to administer. It's obviously a big moneymaker for Warner. Is one of the big 3 record labels in the whole world, big 4 now. So if you got a favorite Deftones song or album, drop it in the comments and let us know. Surely a lot of people love the band as I do. And then, I wanted to talk for a second, obviously Diamond Eyes, we got Diamond Eyes and this current arc that they're on because we didn't get Eros, and supposedly initially Eros was supposed to be heavier. If you've heard the demos, cool. I don't have a horse in this game. Warner immediately, owns the rights to all their stuff, recorded and unrecorded. And it got me thinking about unreleased albums. And we've had a lot of news this year about unreleased stuff. Bands taking a long time to put out a new album. Junius has a new album coming out after almost 10 years this week. Anthrax's first album in 10 years will be right around my birthday. And I started to think about other bands and things. And then Deftones had not commented, and people like conspiracy theories. I used to love conspiracy theories and things like that until they got stupid. X-Files is my favorite show of all time. Also followed by Fringe, also followed by Twilight Zone and things like that. So I love some lore. But, Deftones leaked it themselves because they announced their festival the next day. No, I think somebody had access to a drive somewhere that had the Deftones music on it, saw these things and uploaded it because these were like sort of holy grails for a certain segment of fans who wanted to hear this stuff. So, just my 2 cents. But then Steph went on a podcast today. This is fucking hilarious because reasons. But Steph went on a podcast where he was like, I don't even care. And I can't even remember those songs. When he was like, yeah, I don't have an opinion. I don't care. I don't even remember them. I never listened to them. If you saw the private music long form interview from Apple Music when private music came out last year, Steph was like, I don't even know those songs. I don't know the names. I barely worked on the record. I was sick, and Chino wrote all the riffs mostly. And then Abe was like, check your fucking emails, dude. So we know that Steph is a free spirit. He has, as they said on Reddit today, smoked himself into a new plane of existence, which is his prerogative and fair, because to try to raw dog life is too much, bro. But super interesting that. And then so it made me think about other bands that have unreleased music and fandoms and toxic fandoms. And we've seen a lot of toxic fan bases like Sleep Token and Ghost to an extent, and even some other extreme metal bands, people gatekeeping and or dictating what the band should do or what they owe the fans. And, you've heard me say this multiple times. Fans don't owe you anything. And honestly, if you're going to act like morons, you don't deserve to get the music sent to you. You don't deserve this music. And if it wasn't meant to ever be released, I think a lot didn't put it in the slides, but I don't know if anybody here has seen the Kurt Cobain documentary, Montage of Heck, co-produced by Francis Bean Cobain and Courtney Love. And, all his demos and diaries and lyric books and notes and things that maybe they weren't very coherent were all put out into the world. And I don't know if I was Kurt Cobain and you said, hey, man, you're going to die at 27 in 1994, and then 20 years later, all your private demos and journals and diaries are going to be uploaded to the internet. I'm not sure he would have been happy about that. Some things are not meant to be out in the world. Some things are just a sketch pad, right? Metallica is releasing the deluxe edition of Load to streaming this week with like tons of riff tapes and demos. I have zero interest in the leftovers that didn't make the record, that weren't good enough to make the record, of a record that's not that good in the first place. Actually, Load and Reload, neither are that good. You can debate about that if you want to. They're like halfway decent, both of them. One better than the other. So, so I got to thinking, I've been reading the Kim Thayil book, A Screaming Life, about Soundgarden and his memoirs. And the end of the book, spoiler alert, does, now that they have the rights back to the final music they were going to make with Chris's ideas. Some of them were demos. Some of them are things they had worked on together, but I almost had to relearn. Some things they're just kind of figuring it out as they go with Chris's ideas. There will be a final Soundgarden record. I would guess right now, if it hasn't been announced yet, probably next year at the earliest, if not longer. But, and obviously, apparently, there's also a full album of Chris Cornell's solo music that his second wife says will come out at some point in the future. My Chemical Romance had a song out this year that was from their shelved album from 2013. We may eventually get a new My Chem album. I know their fan base is ravenous for them, as they are also bigger than they ever have been. It's if you Google the internet, it will tell you if you can still hear it. I think it was uploaded by some people to SoundCloud, Internet Archive, aka the Wayback Machine might have it. I personally don't want to hear it. Most of it's on YouTube. Like, honestly, like a lot of the majority, like 80 to 90% of the tracks have in one form or another been on the internet for over a decade. But, if you really have to hear it, cool. I'm not going to look down on you if you do, because maybe you're an obsessive fan and you need every Deftones song. And thank you for your question, Bruh Mode 1899. Feel free to subscribe to us. I will follow you back after the show is over. And the same thing with y'all on TikTok and Instagram if you're new here. Other bands with infamous non-releases. Did you know that there was a 9 Inch Nails, Tool, Pantera, Rob Zombie band supergroup called Tapeworm that never came out? Some of those songs ended up on the first Pussifer record and first EP. But when Trent Reznor had his studio in New Orleans, Louisiana, where Philip Anselmo recorded the Great Southern Trendkill vocals, and Maynard also hung out with Trent there on tour with A Perfect Circle, united by their friendship between them and Josh Freese. They recorded Trent recorded a whole side project album with Charlie Clouser, who is basically came into White Zombie on Electric Head and then stayed with Rob for the first part of his career. And there's apparently a whole record worth of material with Trent and Maynard and Phil all doing vocals on Industrial Metal. I want to hear this, but like, it's not going to kill me if I never hear it, but I'm absolutely curious, aren't you? I am. Some other famous examples of records that didn't come out. Weezer notoriously had to follow up their debut, the self-titled Weezer Blue album. And Rivers Cuomo started writing what felt like a personal rock opera similar to The Wall called Songs from the Black Hole. And then he scrapped it because he thought it was too personal. And then he took some of the bones of that record and made Pinkerton, which again divided their fans because it didn't sound anything like the power pop rock of the Blue album. And it was very introspective and painful and painful for Rivers. And then years later, when Weezer uploaded everything they ever made onto the internet, people got those demos. But, Weezer fans, Weezer is a band I know we should maybe do a deep dive on at some point. Are they either the smartest, coolest band ever or secretly one of the worst bands ever? I don't know. Rivers is kind of terrible. Bruce Springsteen, my favorite Bruce Springsteen album, and probably everybody's favorite Bruce Springsteen album, is Nebraska. And if you watch the recent movie Deliver Me from Nowhere, which I still have yet to see, but was the subject of this exact thing, Bruce was trying to make his breakthrough album into a more hard rock and pop realm, but he wrote these introspective songs, and the label heard it and was like, nope, you need to do this with the full band. And then they heard back the Nebraska Electric sessions, and he scrapped the whole thing, went in, just recorded it by himself with his last remaining money in the studio, and just did a whole solo unplugged record. And that is, widely considered to be his best record. Does the Nebraska live record exist? Probably. Do we really want to hear it? I don't, but the British have a saying, right? You can't gild a lily. You can't perfect perfection. Slipknot, man, this one came out this year recently. Look Outside Your Window was recorded during the 2008 sessions of All Hope Is Gone with Clown and Corey, seen here from Hot Ones, and Jim Root, and put it out. And Sid the Third there, and it's an album that has songs on it. I don't know if you've heard it yet. I was so excited for this thing. And then it kind of came out on Record Store Day, and I tried to get a copy, and it sold out while I was waiting online for 2 hours, which I think I will not do again. And Big Fets is here. Greg Kennelty, what up, what up? So Slipknot's Look Outside Your Window, there was like some debate about whether it would ever get released. Would Roadrunner release it? Because it was technically recorded during studio time Roadrunner paid for. Do they own the album? The rest of the band that is not on the album did not want it to be called the Slipknot album, so it was eventually just called Look Outside Your Window with the artist names. But definitely, I don't know if it lived up to the hype. It's certainly interesting. I don't know if it's great, but it's certainly interesting. An interesting snapshot of this other life the band could have had. I think it's super interesting. If you've heard it, let me know. I will eventually get a review of it up on the site at ghostcoldmag.com. I did an interview last fall with David Leaf. David Leaf is a writer and the biographer of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. You might know this story of Smile. This has been talked about and debated and parodied, and books have been written about this, where Brian, was struggled a lot of his life with mental illness. They were becoming a huge band, and it just got kind of out of control. I highly recommend you watch the Beach Boys documentary on Hulu, where like Beach Boys and Beatles were neck and neck for their fame at one point. No worries, brother. No worries. Humboldt County, word up, word up. Good to see you, Rubber Band. So I interviewed David. He gave the eulogy at Brian Wilson's funeral. And Brian Wilson, this Smile album never really came out. They went and took what was left over and made it into Smiley Smile, but the experience almost killed poor Brian. And then 50 years later in his career, he got to perform Smile live and do a live album and really get his vision out. And then he died, which is terrible. But great interview with David. Maybe I'll link it in the description of the show so you can check it out. Super interesting about fame and creativity and all these things. Jimi Hendrix is part of two missing albums. Number one, he had a solo album he had done after the experience and not meant to be Band of Gypsies, that he gave the demo reels to Mitch Mitchell, who then took them and lost them. So there's a lost Jimi Hendrix solo album somewhere out there that is not Jimi Hendrix Experience. It's not Band of Gypsies. It's not jazz with Miles Davis. It's just Jimmy making rock songs by himself with, intended for a full band. And then, of course, this one is, it's half a fiction, half a fact. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which were kind of a brand new band at the tail end of Jimi Hendrix's career, they were such fans of each other that they were going to make a band called Help, Hendrix, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but did not happen because Jimmy died. If I ever get to interview Carl Palmer, I will put him on the spot and ask him about this. Carl Palmer is one of my favorite drummers ever. He is carrying on the legacy of Emerson, Lake and Palmer by himself. Super interesting. But yeah, Jimmy. And then, there's a whole bunch of lost Jimmy records. I don't love the 70s and 80s Jimmy reimaginings where producers took his records and chopped them up and put new performances on them. I am not a fan of those at all. ELP and Jimi Hendrix, bro, help. It almost sells itself, right? Could you just imagine Jimmy playing on Tarkus or Still You Turn Me On or Lucky Man and soloing and trading solos with Greg Lake and Keith Emerson? Rest in power to both of them. Can I talk about some Bill Ward? Bill Ward has an unreleased solo album we've been waiting for a long ass time. He has put out, he's kind of slowing down. I love me some Bill Ward, but you know, there is supposedly another Bill Ward solo album. There's also a final album from Paul Di'Anno of Iron Maiden. Another final album. He had recorded a lot of stuff in South America before he passed. And then this Beatles thing came to my mind. There are multiple lost Beatles things. There were apparently, when the Beatles were doing the anthology CD series in the 90s, there were some unearthed 1964-65 experimental tracks, which would predate their Drugs, India, Rubber Soul and Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper phase, which showed that they were into experimentation and recording studio wizardry well before the Drugs. And George apparently vetoed putting it out or including it on anthology. So there's sort of unreleased songs from that. And then in the 90s, Yoko Ono gave Paul McCartney John Lennon's final demos. I think if you know the song "Free as a Bird" was put out and in a movie, and that was mostly just John with a little help from Yoko and Paul producing. But then Now and Then, which was billed as the last ever Beatles song, George had put a solo down in the 90s, and at the time, I think they felt like the demos weren't quality enough to put out as a recording. And so George laid down a solo to what was there, and then 25 years later, Paul, Yoko, George's son, and Ringo came together, collaborated to put out this Now and Then song. It was put out as a single last year. I think it won a Grammy because they just wanted to be able to give the Beatles one more fucking Grammy. You know, the Beatles don't care about a Grammy. But you know, I heard it and I was like, boy, this sounds very processed and not. I'm hearing John, but I'm hearing a lot of processing on his vocals. Maybe that was a necessity. It's kind of like sometimes if you get a color photograph you took and it's too bright, maybe you need to, it's too oversaturated, and then you edit it in black and white and it looks kind of normal. It was like maybe that. Isn't there a song called Bombers and Bombays or something? Yep, that comes to mind. That comes to mind, Ultimate Sin. Thanks for being here. Welcome back. So Beatles, I mean, if there are more Beatles things, Paul just turned 83, 84. Ringo is 80-something. I mean, like, these guys are not going to live forever. And I don't necessarily require any more Beatles music. I got my favorite Beatles album already. That's Abbey Road. Green Day, American Idiot, apparently had their entire album demoed and stolen from the studio. It was supposed to be called Cigarettes and Valentines, and the album was stolen. And then Billy Joe Armstrong said, you know what? Fuck that record. We'll just write a whole new record. And they went back to the studio, back to the drawing board, did not try to relearn those songs or remember them or re-record them, and wrote a whole new album that became American Idiot. So, you know, which is to a whole generation of Gen Z and millennials, a humongous album in their life, right? Like really the first protest music they ever heard that was, you know, from a rock band. And really changed Green Day from being sort of a successful pop punk band to being kind of this grandiose Who kind of band. The Who from England, not the Mongolian metal band. Other lost albums. Pantera, this doesn't get talked about a lot. There's a few things. First of all, when Pantera came back with the new lineup of Charlie Benante and Zakk Wylde, they played a club show in Minneapolis. That record was supposed to come out, has not come out yet. We have heard there will be a Pantera live album from this new festivals, headline arenas, and Metallica tours, especially if they recorded any soundboard stuff from Metallica's incredible sound system. That would be amazing. I don't know how you feel about Pantera without the brothers. We just passed the anniversary of Vinnie Paul's death. Almost 10 years for Vinnie Paul. Ozzy sung on it. Pretty cool song, for sure, for sure. But also, the Pantera fans know the classic home videos by Pantera, the 3 videos from Hell compilation that was on Blu-ray and DVD, and the Dime Vision release that also came out after Vinny and Dime passed. But we never got a full Pantera concert video that isn't a bootleg from the classic band. It was supposed to be a Pantera Volume 4 one concert done. Multi-camera angles. They shot a lot of stuff on tour between Trendkill and Reinventing the Steel before the breakup and the disbandment. And the footage is somewhere. Someone has it. Someone has it. So I'd love to get that. I'd love to see, I know that Rita Haney has In Dime We Trust. They just released new Dimebag guitars in partnership with Dean Zelensky. But I would love to get a full Pantera concert video that is not a bootleg. I used to have like a tremendous collection of classic rock and metal bootlegs, and they're all gone now, which sucks. But and then Pink Floyd, boy, sometimes if you have some leftover music, you shouldn't put it out. Now, I don't know if you all have time or know the lore of Pink Floyd's breakup with Roger Waters. Rick Wright was fired during The Wall, and his parts were replaced by Roger, Bob Ezrin once again, and Michael Kamen, who went on to become a huge film composer and orchestra leader. And so Rick was kicked out of the band. They continue on for the Wall tour, and finally the final cut with no Rick around. When the band comes back, Roger, when he was legally not allowed to use the Pink Floyd name anymore, and Nick and Dave came back for momentary lapse of reason in 1987, one of the stipulations was Rick could never rejoin the band, which sucked. They did bring Rick on as a guest to play on the record and also tour. And then in the final, really proper Pink Floyd record, Division Bell, Rick is back to being a full member-ish. And so they had all these leftovers, and they put out this thing a couple of years ago called The Endless River, and it sucks. It's just demos of Rick playing keyboards, and it was basically done to get Rick's family some money because, you know, the idea is that maybe Pink Floyd value and who is a songwriter and who owns the music, like Rick was getting the least amount of the money because he had passed away and he wasn't still around. So I like the idea of putting out something posthumously to support your friend, but not a complete lame piece of shit, which it was. Ultimate Sin killing it here in the comments. Supposedly Red Hot Chili Peppers are back in the studio. Yep, that's true. I do. I love Uplift Mofo Party Plan. I was a longtime Chili Peppers fan. I literally would injure myself trying to play bass like Flea. Mother's Milk, I had the tape in high school and I broke it. Blood Sugar Sex Magic's an all-time classic. I love One Hot Minute. And then in a spicy hot take that no one else will agree with, I think everything since One Hot Minute has been very mid and even not good. They have a handful of good songs. Anthony Kiedis, blah, 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 California. And that's a song. Yes, they got back with John. They put out 2 records already with John. I don't like what they did to Klinghoffer, although, you know, he's got his own personal problems that probably would have exited him from the band. Oh, yeah. Studio Tizzy. What up? GR Spaghetti incident with Strayland. I do believe there are some of those songs that were recorded with Izzy. Although, funnily enough, what's up, man? I love you, Alex, and I miss you, and we should catch up sometime soon. Southeast of Heaven is here. What's up? What's up? Your doctor says you have to take a laxative. This is very interesting. After listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I do believe the GNR stuff exists with Izzy, but Axl is still so mad at Izzy, even though he's sort of made peace with everybody else. I don't think we'll ever get it, although GNR continues to troll the vaults and put out demos and things that Axl had done. Apparently, and of course, GNR, there is apparently new GNR music being written for release. Will we ever get it? I don't know. Might have to wait until the band comes back. Don is here. So yeah, GNR, of course, is another one. Anyway, in the meantime, Deftones private music, the band is doing humongous numbers, and private music was one of the top albums for me last year. And I love it so much. Rubber Band Man says, "What up, Southeast of Heaven?" Don. Anyway, and speaking of, supposedly we're going to get a new King Diamond and Merciful Fate record at some point. But also, I don't know if any of that's actually closer to happening than the last couple of years when we've heard a new song or two, and that was about it. Deftones, in addition to touring Europe and European festivals all summer, are co-headlining Sick New World, Texas for the first time ever. System of a Down, Deftones, and Slayer down, and a bunch of other bands. What a good-looking lineup that is. And yeah, man, they just announced their Dia de los Deftones event, which we are looking at maybe even possibly going to in Petco Park in San Diego. Deftones, The Neighborhood, AFI, BK The Rula, Converge, Jenny Beth, Ladrones, Lip Critic, and Lust Sick Puppy, November 7th in Petco Park. So, personally speaking, just to wrap this puppy up, I don't particularly care if I never hear Eros. I don't judge you if you went out of your way to go find it and download it and keep it and my purchase. But like, you know, at a certain point, if the band didn't intend to put this out, there's a reason. Again, Don came in late. Reload is dropping on all streaming services, like 80 tracks of Reload extras done. Do we need this? The record is barely a 50-50. It's barely good. It's got like some bangers and a bunch of other things that are songs. Technically, they qualify. Even if Reload was your favorite album and Metallica is your favorite band and you're obsessed about them, do you really want to hear the song? Do you really want to hear stuff that didn't make the records? I don't think so. Not, you know, this is the problem we talked about on my other podcast about Record Store Day. There's all these demos and forgotten things and bonus tracks. Not all of them should be released, and not all of them collectors want to have. AFI, but BK the Ruler, yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with her, to be honest with you. Converge, though, and Jenny Beth. Jenny Beth is a protege of Trent Reznor, so I do kind of like her. Let's see, a few more questions coming in. As much as Eros leak sounds tantalizing, I truly think it's best to still leave them alone. Respect for Chi and the band. Exactly, man. But the fans are like, I'd like that there's some conflict and it's not just like complete fealty to the leak. But yeah, I love that comment, Digital Eyes. I appreciate you. What are my thoughts on Kiedis? Kiedis is the most okay lead singer in a Hall of Fame band of all time. You know, it's like, hey, it's kind of like I love Seven Dust and I love Vince, but it's like, hey, you're our buddy and we don't have a bass player. Do you want to like play bass and just play the bottom string every song? That's Vince from Seven Dust. And I love the guy and I love Seven Dust. Same thing with Kiedis. Hey, we got this awesome band. We don't have anybody to sing. You want to sing? I can rap. Cool. You. And that's how he became he's not a good singer and he's definitely not a great person. But, you know, I'm certainly not rooting against him. I love the Chili Peppers to an unreal, like a ridiculous amount in high school. Again, Mother's Milk. I go back to it still. I barely want to hear the shit that is on those albums. Exactly, right? And yeah, Melissa, nice. So I didn't hear the rip, but I'm saying that the majority, like 80% of these Eros songs are on the internet anyway and have been for over 15 years. And some of the parts of those songs, when you hear these tracks that are already on, if you type in Deftones Eros on YouTube, you will hear things like, oh, that's from RX Queen, that's from Rosemary, that's from Sex Tape, little bits and pieces that they liked and they grafted onto things, which is, you know, every guitar player has a million riffs they never used. You know, what was the Die by My Hand riff from Creeping Death, my favorite Metallica song, was Kirk's riff from an Exodus song they never chose to use. So he took the riff. And then Gary Holt in his book is like, man, I put on the new Metallica and I heard an Exodus riff. I was pissed. But they didn't own it. Kirk owned it. Kiedis was great up to Blood Sugar. You know, he's fun. He's fun. I don't think he ever took himself too seriously until Rick Rubin got a hold of him. You know, Rick Rubin will teach a person how to sing finally. Good for him. I Do the Yells is here. What up? My audio is cutting in and out. I'm probably yelling too loud. Why are you typing in all caps, Don? Would I take Oz or Kiedis? Oh man, Ozzy forever, bro. Like Ozzy is my hero. I'm not okay that we are at the 1 year anniversary almost of Ozzy passing away. But that's again, if you've got a favorite Deftones song or a Chi Cheng memory, or if you ever saw Chi live, drop a comment, even if you're hearing this on the rebroadcast. Check it out. I will not be doing my show tomorrow because I am going to be moving. I'm going to try to jump on Friday afternoon and do my weekly show. Thank you for watching. Once again, if you're new here, like and subscribe, do all the things. It helps us out. I'm Keefe from ghostcultmag.com, and peace. We'll talk to you soon.